Hi, Alex Osterbury here, Director of Rugby for Saracens Women. You're listening to the Saracens Fezcast.
This is the Fezcast.
The following podcast is brought to you on behalf of the Saracen Supporters Association and is not an official product of Saracens Limited. Content provided voluntarily by our guests and contributors are of their own opinion, which may change over time and should not be taken as fact, particularly as the podcast hosts are regularly talking drivel anyway. If you've got some drivel of your own you'd like to share, you can find us on Twitter and Instagram at Fezcast_SSA. You can search Facebook for the Fezcast, or you can email fezcast.ssa@outlook.com.
You're listening to the Fezcast.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to our next edition of the Fezcast. And it's a four-way tonight. We've got myself, we've got Matt, Barry, and Sam joining us. Good evening, gentlemen. How are we all?
Evening.
All right, mate. I've warmed up.
Yeah, well, me and Matt were at the game on Saturday for Saracens Women. Got frozen and not warmed up by the performance on the pitch, which we will cover off in part one. And then I take it did all three of you go to the Edinburgh game?
Yeah, I was in the warmth of the Tulip Club though, so it was all good. Mulled wine was flowing. It was great.
I was out in the cheap seats with the frozen coffee.
I was sat at home with a couple of Negronis watching the game. So yeah, but plenty to discuss across both games. We'll do part one. We'll start with the women's game. Sam, Barry, did you see any of the women's game?
I saw the result, and it didn't inspire me to catch the highlight reel this week because I thought it's just going to be Gloucester highlights. Which is a real shame. But I have to say, when I was in the Tulip Lounge, I might mention that a couple more times today. Lotte Clapp was up there before talking about obviously what's going on with the girls at the moment, and she said that actually they're so used to winning that they and she said it wasn't in like a big-headed way, but they're so used to winning that it is quite a shock to the system when they do lose, and particularly when they lose quite heavily. But she thinks it's a really positive shock to the system. And she actually says she thinks this result has been coming maybe for a little while. Gloucester looked particularly formidable this season and were quite rightly tipped for big things pre-season. And she said, this was actually a really great wake-up call to us, that maybe we'd actually been floating by this season a little bit, just sort of waiting for our superstars to come back, so to speak. So she seemed to sort of try and take as much positive out of the game as she possibly could, and explain to everyone there that obviously that they still believe that they're gonna do well during the course of this season. Obviously, welcoming back the World Cup stars in January, and she still saw a lot of positives to come from this season, albeit a big old blip that happened on Saturday. But I haven't caught the actual highlights yet, and I'll be honest with you, I'm probably not going to.
Well, I would suggest not, to be perfectly honest with you, and I will say, and you're absolutely right, Sam. I don't think the girls need telling. I mean, for one reason, because I think Alex told them on the pitch at the end of the game in no uncertain terms. I mean, we couldn't quite hear what he's saying, could we, Matt? But the implications were there that they were getting a right proper bollocking, and quite honestly, deservedly so. And I think in nearly 30 years ago to watch Saracens, that is one of the worst performances by a Saracens team I've seen. And I mean, that's not being disrespectful to the girls. I don't think that it's through lack of effort or anything like that. But they got caught cold by an extremely good Gloucester side. Right from the start, I think the first kick to touch was sliced off the outside of the boot. And from it, Gloucester scored a try, and it just continued that way. And I think I went along wanting to see Grace's handoffs, because I think it's a thing of beauty. As I mentioned to Georgia and Leanne before the game when I met them at the start of the game, and she never got the ball. Not many people did get the ball, and not many people, if you looked at 1 to 15 or 1 to 23 across that pitch, I don't think there are many players. Matt, you mentioned prop forwards. The front row perhaps did reasonably well, but it wasn't great, was it, Matt?
It wasn't, no. Yeah, I think one of the few things that came out of it was both starting props, to be fair, were at least sticking tackles in. They were at every ruck. There was. It's one of those things you looked at it and think there is effort going in. It's not like they've all switched off. But yeah, we have won plenty of games 50 odd to not a lot over the last 3 or 4 years, and we've looked at it and gone, yeah, we were the better team by a country mile. It was the other way around this time, and yeah, the people that have tipped Gloucester to be up there at the end of the season, they showed that they have got it. Because let's face it, that wasn't a bad team we put out. It's not like we rang 25 changes and we're playing the third 15. It was. There was a decent set of international players. There's some of our up-and-coming players in there. Some of the new signings that we've made that we've been impressed with so far this season. It just didn't click at all. And actually, I'm not going to tell you who said this in case it comes back to bite them, but I did manage to catch a little word with someone who basically said, yeah, after 15, 20 minutes, we knew it wasn't going to go very well. It was just one of those days, and it was a case of how much, and we were just doing our absolute best to stem the tide, which sometimes it happens. And as you said, Jez, it hasn't happened to Saracens Women for a long time. That's our record loss in the league in the 5 years of Premier 15s, and it was just all round. You couldn't pick anyone out that let the team down single-handedly. It was just an all-round bad day. And yeah, Alex Osterbury probably let them have it in the middle of the pitch. There were plenty of them that came over to the side of the pitch talking to their families and things and said, yeah, that was dreadful. They all know that it wasn't good enough. Us watching it didn't find it good enough. And to be honest, the best thing that's come out of that is what Sam's just said there, that Skipper has fronted up in the Tulip Cup, and I think there is a positive spin on it, in that it will give him a kick up the bum. So we'll have to see over the next couple of weeks what goes on. There's a trip to Sale ahead, which isn't going to be too easy at the moment either.
Well, absolutely. I mean, that's the sign, and that's what you're looking for, isn't it? It's how you come back from it. I remember a couple of the Valentine Day massacre from a few seasons ago for the men against Wasps, where they got an absolute thumping at home, wasn't it, as well? And it's how you come back from that defines you as a team. Now, what I am going to say is what was most disappointing is it appears that a lot of the Red Roses players have been kept back another week from coming back from New Zealand. Poppy Clear was walking around the pitch. She didn't get a great deal of minutes out in New Zealand, certainly not as many minutes as Pat's. Have no idea why she couldn't have played. Considering, Gloucester had a couple of players, Maud Muir, for instance, who played equally as much as Poppy out in New Zealand. Was back in on the bench, I think, wasn't it? Or whichever way around. But, it just seems, the club have made a big deal about this being the game that the internationals were going to be back, to come back and support them. And at the end of the day, we saw Leanne Infante was there, Poppy Clear was there. But, they try to get a big crowd in, and then suddenly there's a bit of a damp squib because, without wishing to diminish the players who are on the pitch, we were perhaps expecting to see the likes of Marley Packer and Poppy Clear on that pitch, and we didn't. And that was very disappointing.
I suppose the thing we were sort of talking about at the beginning of this season with some of the men's players, and there was the sort of fiasco of certain players coming back early, and why were certain players allowed to play? We had that thing at Quins, didn't we, where Marcus Smith didn't play, but Owen Farrell did, and everyone was looking forward to that matchup. And I guess it's the same thing, but maybe in reverse, is that the players know how they feel, the coaches assess them, and I guess the decision is made, and we have to. I suppose they know better than we do as to whether they're ready, whether they should be playing, whether they need a little bit more rest, or whether they're ready and raring to go. And maybe on the men's side of things, that worked quite nicely for us at the beginning of the year. Perhaps some of the players have come back from New Zealand and actually don't feel quite ready to play just yet. And that decision was made, I'm sure, with the players. I imagine made that decision as much as the coaching staff did, as we. I'm sure it would, if it was the other way around and they said, no, I'm ready and raring to go, they would have, they would have let them play. So I guess we have to trust our coaches, don't we, really, that they know what they're doing and they're bringing players back at a pace that's good for them.
Positives from it. I mean, I suppose first things first, referee on the day, and we are going to mention referees on this show. I mean, we did say off air that we weren't going to mention referees, but I thought the referee had a really good game. And also showed a good sense of humour because 2 or 3 times I questioned him about the deliberate knock-on, which he kind of, which he was very good in a way. I did it in a jokey way as well, which I think he picked up on and everything. But and the other thing was, I also told Matt and his friend Ben there how to beat Tyson Fury in the boxing ring, which is always a good thing. I mean, it shows you what the entertainment was like that I was describing how you beat Tyson Fury. Not saying I'd do it, you know. I mean, perhaps 5 years past my peak, but
he is an avid listener, so he's going to hear this.
You've changed. You've come down a bit there, Jez. Now you're on air. You were giving it the big one on Saturday.
that might have been the chips talking. I don't know, but yeah, no. Yeah, it was nice to get to the StoneX, even though it was cold as anything. I had about 72 layers on, which for someone who doesn't feel the cold was quite impressive. But yeah, look, a bad day at the office. We'll see how they go next game. You know, we wish them all the best. And hopefully, we'll see a few more of the big name players back for the Sale game, and they go into Christmas looking good.
Yeah.
Shall we have a word from one of our sponsors, and then we'll come back and discuss the European game then.
You are listening to the Fezcast, which is proudly sponsored by the Saracens Supporters Association, and I'm Alison Davis, one of the SSA committee. For a £10 annual subscription, the SSA provides our members with monthly newsletters, virtual and in-person player events, away match ticket allocations, and we organise pre-match gatherings at away matches. We sponsor men's and women's players, and we support the Saracens Foundation Track Club on behalf of our members. On top of all that, every year we have a seasonal SSA badge, which is exclusive to members. Where else can you get that much value for a tenner? Join now at membermojo.co.uk/SSA, or come and see us on match day in the Oasis at the StoneX.
This is the Fezcast.
Well, welcome back to the second part of this week's Fezcast with myself, Matt, Sam and Barry. And the big game on the weekend is the return of, well, I say European competition. One thing's for certain, before we talk about the game itself, there's a lot of people who aren't very happy about the way that the competition is gone with the introduction of the South African franchises into the competition. And secondly, there's a lot of people that making a big deal about crowds and the lack of crowds at games. Now, I don't know what the attendance was like at StoneX on Sunday. It seemed pretty full. It seemed pretty loud. Gloucester had less than 10,000 people apparently down to South Africa. A long journey down there. You just didn't see the competition doesn't seem to have sparked people's enthusiasm. Am I getting that wrong, or how do we feel? Barry, over to you first.
Yeah, it's a difficult one. I mean, I'm a bit old school. It's a cup competition. Just stick the names in a hat and draw them out, and we'll play a game against whoever we draw against, rather than having these complicated groups. I mean, I get why they've done this, because there were too many dead rubbers in the old format. You'd lose your first couple of games, maybe 3, and then it was kind of all over, and you weren't going to qualify, and you knew it, and you were sort of scratching around, putting out the mixed veg, as other people call them at times, as the second team. But it does seem a bit odd that we're in the same pool as Leinster but can't play them until the semi-finals, all sorts of permutations. And I don't think for me, I love it. I love the chance to play different teams, sides we don't see year in, year out, albeit Edinburgh here for the second year. But it's a great opportunity to see different sides, different players, and some real big stars as well. But you're right, it hasn't caught everyone's imagination. I mean, attendances were awful. I think they announced the crowd changes to the team at Brentford on the London Irish game on Friday night.
Yeah, I mean, Matt, what was your impression at StoneX?
Yeah, I think attendances were down a little bit, but let's face it, there were probably some people that maybe a bit fair weather and the fact that it was -1 for most of the day did put some people off. I mean, I sit in the same seat every week, and I'm normally sitting around the same people every week who also have a season ticket, and that quite a few of them weren't there. So, yeah, I don't know whether that's the fact that the competition itself hasn't captured the imagination, whether it's the fact that there's been a few weeks off, everyone's sort of lost track of what's going on, or whether it was just because it was cold was the issue. But I don't know. I'm like Barry a little bit. There's a part of me that doesn't like the format of the competition, but actually I think it does work. I think people need to actually look at it. There's so many people saying, "Oh, it's so complex and no one understands it." Well, actually, it is pretty simple. I just haven't got the words to do it properly. But it just it means that there are less games, so you're not playing those dead rubbers, as Barry said. But what it also means is, rather than sort of knocking the pools down from 4 teams to 3 teams to create less games, if you did that, you'd have a team that's having a week off all the time. It wouldn't work. So the way they've done it is so that every single team is playing all the time, but you're actually only playing 2 teams home and away. So it does make a lot of sense. And we talk about player welfare all the time. They've done something to reduce fixtures. So I get it. Let's keep it. Everyone just get your head around it. But it's I don't know. There's it needs a bit of a rebrand. I think we have to stop calling it the European competition, because it isn't. South African teams are in it as well, but it should be a good competition. South African teams coming in and playing us at club level, I think is good. There's a lot of good sides that we would like to play in an exhibition game that we're actually going to get to play in a competitive match. So,
well, absolutely. And I mean, you've got World Cup winning players. I mean, and World Cup winning captains playing in the competition. So, yeah, the competition's got to be great. But let's move on to Saracens versus Edinburgh. And the first thing I'm going to say is I think in this game, it was a close-fought win. Edinburgh played some extremely good rugby. And let's not forget, last year in the competition we were both in last year, Edinburgh beat us at StoneX. But I do think that it shows our players who came back in, your Farrells, your Togis, your Jamie Georges, not having meaningful club rugby for them to play in over the last 2 weeks, through no fault of their own, and coming together. And it took, other than the first burst when you thought, oh, hang on a second, we're on something special here, where Shaw Maitland and Billy Vanapola connected, and Maki Vanapola connected, and made that beautiful little bit of a run in there. But yeah, it was two teams coming together almost, I thought, Sam.
I was saying I was quite lucky. I got to stand next to Big Nige from the Supporters Association on Sunday, who was a good laugh to stand next to. And I said this to him. I said, I don't think I've seen this season a team better coming to the StoneX better prepared to play us. They quite clearly had watched every single minute of every single game that we played, have quite clearly seen this whole new Saracens, new brand of rugby. And they came with a game plan to nullify that, and they almost pulled it off. And if they had, then you've got to give the players and the coaching staff at Edinburgh all the kudos in the world, because you could see they were doing everything they can. Every single breakdown was slow. They were very quick in defence to panic us into that. There was a number of times where we played too many passes, one too many passes, and that was, I believe, down to Edinburgh forcing us to do that, because the mentality that's been instilled in us this season is go for the jugular, play this expansive type of rugby. And Edinburgh actually exploited that. And in my humble opinion, I think we would have had a much easier ride if we'd actually reverted to type in the second half, not started running the ball around and doing all this fantastic stuff, just getting back to the old box kicks and territorial rugby. And I think that's how we would have actually put the sword to them a lot easier. But all the time in the world for Edinburgh, they did their homework, and I think they'll be bitterly disappointed, as well as bitterly cold, that they didn't actually pull off the game plan to perfection. It was really, let's be honest, One of their, I can't remember which of their players made the break, absolutely butchered that chance at the end. Why he didn't get his head down and just score the try, no one will know. And two, class bits of kicking from Daly and Faz that were the difference ultimately in the two teams on the day. So plaudits to Edinburgh, came here and nearly gave us a good see into, and well done to them.
I'm going to come back to the try that was butchered in a little bit when we talk about one particular player. But before we do that, the one thing I've written down here is who refereed the game. Now, I think the lads from Georgia who refereed the game did as well as he possibly could do, but with no disrespect to him, I think it was a step in class above where he's perhaps been used to. And it showed, because I do think that actually what I put down here, who actually did referee the game. Was it Sir? Was it Jamie Ritchie? Or was it Owen Farrell? And actually, I think Jamie Ritchie took it too far. You know, when Owen Farrell gets all this, and we've had this discussion, me and Matt have had this discussion when the question with Matteo Reynal the other week, you know, where Faz questioned him. I think Faz actually refereed him very well, or managed to referee extremely well, and was quite respectful in the way that he spoke to him, and almost, in a way, was a senior player guiding an inexperienced referee through the game. And I think that's the persona that Faz took on. Jamie Ritchie, who makes Faz look like the most respectful man in the world, because he's a typical Scottish, albeit from the wilds of West London, where he was born or whatever, but he's very much in the thinly colder John Jeffrey kind of Derek White, you know, those gnarly, horrible Scottish back row players who like getting under the skin of just about everybody. They will wind up. I think Jamie Ritchie could possibly have a fight with himself in the telephone box if he was so inclined. And I do think he, unfortunately for Edinburgh, managed to get on the wrong side of the referee, who was, as I say, being managed very well by Faz, and that kind of was a bit of a difference in the game. Is that fair, Barry?
Yeah, I wondered, this is what, you wouldn't have picked this up from the TV. The very first penalty in the game was right in front of the Edinburgh bench, and they gave it 5-10 seconds before the referee did. They were all jumping up and down and whooping and hollering, and the referee just gave it. And I thought, I wonder if he's not coming across as quite strong enough to really deal with it. And from there, I think it just kind of snowballed. He didn't, for me, I don't have the referee mic, so perhaps I missed something out from there, but he didn't seem to give clear decisions, and his signals and his communication looked wrong. And the number of times he signalled time off and went to speak to the players, it was, you know, at some point you might do it once, you might do it twice, but then the third time you think it's got to be some actual action come out of it. And yeah, I mean, if he did penalise them, he marched them back twice, I think, and obviously produced 2 yellow cards, but he didn't really seem to stamp his authority on it early, and that's probably not any disrespect to him. It's probably just that step up in class that makes that much harder.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the referee showed enough promise that he will obviously develop into a good referee, and hopefully he sat down with Jamie Ritchie and Mike Blair and Owen Farrell and Mark McCall after the game, had a pint with them babies and had a discussion about it. And I think he will have learned from that. I don't think he was making huge rickets. Some of his decisions were slightly, and my big bugbear is, the one thing I hate is at ruck time, players going 15 foot past the ruck, taking players out, and he didn't penalise it until he penalised Alex Lewandowski. And I think I have to feel sorry for Alex, because he's watched every single ruck, players coming off their feet, going past, taking players out of the ankle. He's thinking, oh, we can get away with that. And then suddenly he's done it to win quick ball, and he's got penalised. And that's the issue, when there's a lack of consistency in there. The other big decision, I'm going to bring Matt in on this one, because I think he might have a point of view on this one. WP Nell took CHH out, lifted the leg in the air, banged him down on his shoulder. Personally, I think it was a red. And if he'd seen red, I don't think anybody could have had any arguments about it. He saw yellow. I think there was a slight element that maybe it was 12 minutes to go to the end of the game. They were already on a yellow. They were down to 14 men. I think that possibly clouded the decision there, but that should have been a red, shouldn't it, Matt?
Yeah, it's a tricky one for me. I to be honest, when they were first looking at it, I thought it was penalty only, and then having seen it on the screen a few more times, I was getting more and more yellow than red. So I think a lot of it goes back to where we've talked about the game is so subjective that I don't think that was clear cut. I think you could have given a yellow. I think you could have given a red. I think he's probably been saved by the fact that Callum Hunter-Hill stuck his arm out and landed on that rather than landing on his head. So yeah, WP Nell's actually got his opposite number to thank for saving him from a red card. I'm kind of with Barry. It was a little bit tricky for me to sort of have too much of an opinion either way on the referee. I don't like talking about a referee too much when I've been in the stands because I like Barry, I don't have the ref mic, so I can't hear what he's saying. And B, I quite often then watch it on the telly and completely change my opinion of stuff. So it's hard to work out. It seems to me that both sets of fans aren't happy with him, which normally means either the referee's had a really good game because he's given everything 50-50, or he's had a really bad one and no one's got a clue what he's been giving. And I honestly don't know. There were the penalties that he was given against us that they were scoring points from were absolutely clear cut, and I could see them from the stands. So that was fine. But yeah, everything around that, don't know. But yeah, could have been a red card. Equally, I don't think I was particularly irate when he only gave a yellow.
You say about the penalties he gave against us. I mean, I will say that my Mrs. Shazza will tell you that I disagreed with just about every decision he made, but then again, that's what I tend to do. I will just also mention the other interesting one was the tight head. You know, given that Mako Vunipola, his last game for England was completely and utterly supposedly obliterated, although I question the legality of the obliteration. He came back in and obliterated De Bruyne to the point that he was dragged off after 32 minutes. So a great comeback there from Mako Vunipola. We'll also mention a couple of other players. Marco Riccioni, absolutely different class at tight head, really put in a big one. But the player that we really do need to mention is Elliot Daly, who had an absolute blinding game again. And I'm going to come back, it was you, Sam, wasn't it, who mentioned about the butchered try. And I'm going to bring in very quickly Curtly Allardyce's try for South Africa against England, where Marcus Smith just did the old bullfighter, torre, through you go, gave him 10 minutes to work in. And contrast that with what Elliot Daly did. Now, Elliot didn't make the tackle on the lad going down the wing, but what he did was he forced him to come inside because he went at such a pace and made him work and made him put a decision in his mind. Now, you're right, he should have still scored that try in the same way that we got the try when Owen kicked over and Elliot bang, bish, bash, bosh and in, that great. If Marcus Smith had done what Elliot Daly had done against South Africa, he'd have made it an awful lot harder for that try to be scored. Van der Merwe, when he was the kick coming over, completely and utterly butchered it because he went far too fast. But Elliot actually made the lad do something that allowed us to get back and to save that from being a certain try. And then in attack, as you say, I mean, Elliot Faz put one great kick in. Elliot Daly put an absolute perler kick in and just did everything on the game so very well. I mean, Sam, you mentioned him as well.
Yeah. I was thinking, I think that little kick that he has in his armoury, that little nudge that he does, I think he's done it 3 times this season. We've scored every time. So for me, it's not just like I could sit here for hours talking about how brilliant Elliot Daly is. So you just put it down to small little bits that he does. The fact is that for me, rugby's quite easy in terms of figuring out how to do it. You make the right decision and then you execute it. And what Elliot Daly is doing this season is he's making the right decisions and he's executing it. And he's pretty much doing it every time. I can't think of a mistake that he's made this year. I can't think of a silly pass that he's thrown. I can't think of a stupid missed tackle that he's made. I can't think of a kick that he's completely butchered. I mean, I'd probably be wrong, and there's probably people listening going, well, of course there was, Sam. Don't forget that thing that happened at this time, whatever. But he is, not only is he clearly a world-class player, in the top 3 or 4 players in our division this season on form. But I just think that his ability, his accuracy and ability to make the right decisions are what is actually making the class above at the moment. 2 very simple things, but 2 simple things that not a lot of people have, and he's got it in spades at the moment.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think he's been the constant throughout the team this season, as you say, and all brilliant.
He's player of the year so far.
Oh, yeah. I mean, particularly seeing as Theo didn't have a great game on Sunday, which was a shame. But, you know, Matt pointed that out, that sometimes he does have a quiet game. But, you know, he's still learning. And Ben Earl had a reasonably quiet game. I think that's because he came up against the best open side that he's played against this year. And, you know, and they kind of nullified each other almost at points, which was great to see. But, yeah, that Crosby, I thought, had a really good game for Edinburgh. You know, so and I suppose Stuart McInally will be practicing his throwing lineouts and perhaps speaking to his skipper about how to do it properly, because the one they did it was Jamie Ritchie's throw when McInally was off the pitch. So there you go. Look, gentlemen, I think we're coming to the end of this one. I mean, it's been a great discussion. Next week we're going to be back on the 21st with our Christmas show. And although I've put myself up on our Zoom as the Christmas Grinch, there's reasons behind that. My music shows are all miserable Christmas songs, which I love. But we've got a special guest, so keep your eyes open on social medias for that. I did speak to Ollie Shapley on Saturday, so it is kind of confirmed. But we'll let you wait and pick up on the social medias. But yeah, Sam, Barry, Matt, thank you for your time today. It's been superb. Yeah, and a weekend of 2 hours, I think it's fair to say, isn't it, gentlemen?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah.
Half the weather.
Yeah. Well, no, in fairness, that was 2 halves as well. It was cold and then it got colder.
Yeah.
At least your 742 pints of beer that you're currently going through, Barry, are nice and nicely chilled, I suppose.
Yeah, we just need to get a sponsorship from them. They're local as well, so I'll let you in on the details.
Excellent stuff. Gentlemen, thank you very much. And as I say, we'll be back next Wednesday with our pre-Christmas special.
This is the Fezcast.